Mr. Yip Hon Wing.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, MAS began tightening monetary policy in October 2021, and it was among the earlier central banks in the world to do so at a time when the pickup in global inflation was still quite modest. In October, it tightened monetary policy for a fifth time in the last 13 months by recentering up the midpoint of the Singapore dollar nominal effective exchange rate, or SNER, policy band. MAS expects core inflation to stay firm for the rest of the year and into the first half of 2023 before slowing down more discernibly in H2, or the second half. Now, monetary policy takes time to affect inflation. The effects of MAS's successive monetary policy moves are still working their way through the economy. It will also take time for external and domestic-induced price pressures to ease more discernibly. And the cumulative effects of the 5 monetary policy tightening moves are estimated to dampen core inflation by an average of 1.5 percentage points each year over 2022 to 2023. MAS will continue to deploy monetary policy as appropriate to ensure medium-term price stability while recognizing the near-term risks to economic growth from a slowing and uncertain global economy. Now, the member asked about whether the government will consider more targeted measures to rein in food and accommodation prices. On food, the Minister for Trade and Industry had, in October 2022, spoken about how the 1, appreciating Singapore dollar, 2, diversification of Singapore's food supply sources, and 3, government assistance to lower-income and vulnerable Singaporeans should mitigate the effects of higher global food prices. As for accommodation prices, the Ministry of National Development, MND, the Housing Development Board, HDB, and MAS have, as members know, taken steps to promote sustainable conditions in the property market. The government has also increased market subsidies to ensure that prices of new HDB flats remain affordable, as well as increase supply in both the public and private housing markets.
Mr. Yip Hon Wing.
I thank the MOS for his answer. Can the MOS clarify our exchange rate policy and how MAS manages monetary policy? If monetary policy is tightened, would the government ensure that the impact on unemployment in Singapore would not be adversely affected? And how would MAS work with MOM on this? Thank you.
MOS Alvin Tan.
Deputy Speaker, I thank the Honourable Member for his question. First of all, maybe I start with the second question. Inflation, of course, affects everyone, employees, employers alike. And now we are undergoing a very dynamic, volatile, and challenging global environment. And employers must, on their own also, together with partners in the tripartite arrangement, make their companies more productive so that they can pay their employers more to cope with inflation. Now, employers, employees, and government work with tripartite partners to press on. And we work together with all of these partners to transform our economy, to raise our productivity, and also to turn all of the current challenges, which is not just faced by Singapore, but globally, into opportunities. We have launched 23 industry transformation maps. These industry transformation maps help to sharpen our competitiveness for both our companies and our workers. They help to deepen skills and also set the stage for us to raise productivity. All this in turn will hopefully also help us to raise and have more and better wages. The government is helping employees by restructuring businesses and also upskilling employees. We have a couple of different schemes, including Workforce Singapore's job redesign and reskilling programs. Enterprise Singapore has the Enterprise Development Grant, as well as the Productivity Solutions Grant. And on the whole, on the macroeconomic picture, our Economic Development Board is continuing to attract investments, even within this very volatile economic environment. That helps, and the profile of investments have now shifted also to higher value-added, more innovative investments into Singapore, and that will help to create more higher-paying jobs, as well as good wage growth. On the member's first question about the fundamentals and the basics of our monetary policy, I thought it was useful to clarify to members of this House the market, general public, as well as students, MAS's unique approach to monetary policy, given that the PQ is also related to monetary policy. Yesterday, Associate Professor James Lim said in this House, and I quote, "I'm befuddled because even now the government routinely alters levers or policies, such as the interest rate, where there is uncertainty on a year-to-year basis about the level of interest rate," unquote. I wanted to clarify that unlike most central banks which target interest rates, MAS uses the nominal exchange rate as the intermediate target of monetary policy. Now, this is a very unique approach to monetary policy. In fact, MAS's exchange rate policy is Singapore's only form of monetary policy. As Singapore's monetary policy is centered on the exchange rate and our capital markets are open, domestic interest rates are largely determined by global interest rates and foreign exchange rate market expectations of the Singapore dollar. So I thought it would be very useful for us to just clarify that MAS's unique approach to monetary policy is centered on exchange rate monetary policy. Thank you.
Mr. Leong Man Wai.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I'd like to ask the MOS two questions. One is one indicator of whether the MAS have done enough to tighten policies is to look at money supply growth. Do the MOS happen to have data, figures about the money growth in Singapore economy in 2020, 2021, and what is the latest in 2022? First question. Second question, what is the impact of the accumulation of reserves by the MAS over the last 2 years on the inflation picture? Has MAS got any opinion, or the MOS has any opinion or views to share on that? Because we have been accumulating reserves at a much higher, faster rate than in the past. Okay, we all know by now that in 2021, the MAS had accumulated more than $200 billion of reserves. And our normal rate of accumulation is about 40 to 50 billion a year. So what is the impact of that? Has MAS or MOS has any views to share on that? Thank you.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I thank the Honourable Member for his SQ. I invite him to file a separate PQ, but I think MAS's monetary policy, as we mentioned, is very much exchange rate driven. You know right now that central banks all over the world have, by and large, also tightened monetary policy to combat inflation. I think what we are trying to do is also to make sure that in a very dynamic environment, we monitor the rate of increase in terms of prices, as I mentioned in my SQ, but I invite the member to file a separate PQ. Thank you.
Last SQ, Associate Professor James Lim.
Thank you, MOS. And since I was mentioned, I thought it would be useful to clarify with a follow-up question. Does the MAS actually believe that its targeting of the exchange rate, which I understand indeed is the MAS intermediate target, I teach that in my classes, does not actually have any influence on the short-term interest rate prevailing in money markets?
Thank the member for his SQ. As I mentioned earlier on, it is in MAS's monetary policy is focused. In fact, it's our only approach towards monetary policy. It's our exchange rate-based policy. Interest rates are set upon by financial institutions. MAS, because of our open trade architecture, we use our exchange rate, not our interest rate, to manage inflation. So I think that's critical. The global environment, as the Honourable Member knows, is very fluid. And that is why over the course of a year, we have been very careful, very calibrated in our approach towards monetary policy. We have tightened monetary policy 5 times. We will deploy monetary policy as appropriate and as the circumstances change. Thank you.